Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Black, and what I would like to do today is to take a look at the Lest We Forget project and how it has evolved over the years and where we're headed with this in terms of the Vimy Ridge project, which is what you guys are going to be working on for most of the rest of the semester. So the Lest We Forget project was developed by a teacher at SFDCI in Smiths Falls by the name of Blake Seward. Now, Mr. Seward is the most decorated teacher in Canadian history, winning such awards as the Prime Minister's Award and the Governor General's Award for History. What he did about 15 years ago is he decided that he would take a class into library and archives in Ottawa and take a look at soldier files from our hometown of Smiths Falls. Each one of the names of the soldiers he obtained from the cenotaph, and every single town, village, and city across Canada has a cenotaph which is erected to signify the soldiers that fought and died and paid the ultimate sacrifice in wars in World War I and World War II. So each student was assigned one individual soldier, and they went to library and archives and they pulled out these soldier files. And they have 1.8 million of these files stored, and they blew off the dust off the cover of the envelopes and inside the folders. And inside those folders, most of these had not been open in over 100 years. The names of the soldiers was pretty much the starting point of the investigation. And the investigation typically takes weeks, if not months, to conduct. Now, recently, in the last couple of years, Library and Archives is going through those 1.8 million files for every soldier that has ever enlisted in World War I and World War II in Canada. And they're separating those into World War I and World War II, and they are going to be digitizing, and they're in the process right now and about halfway complete of digitizing all of the World War I or the Great War soldiers. So this is an example of one of those files. I just arbitrarily picked Abel Charles Lewis. He was a corporal, and he was born in Derbyshire, England. He probably emigrated into Canada, and it looks like he was living in Hamilton when he first enlisted into the Army. And I think if we can read this correctly, he enlisted on the 4th of October 1915. So that's when he signed up to join World War I. The reasons of why he joined are up to the student as they start to investigate this soldier, and they become an expert on all of the information that's hidden inside of this file. So about 5 years ago, Mr. Seward and I decided that we would take this Lest We Forget project and sort of evolve it into the digital age. And we decided what we would do is we would focus on all of the soldiers that died on Juno Beach during World War II, and the invasion of D-Day. And Canada was one of 5 different beaches that we came upon the shore and first attacked the Germans when we started to sort of throttle them, which marked the end of World War II. Now, it took a substantial amount of time before we did that, but the landing on the beaches was a primary sort of goal that we had to achieve in order to win World War II. And we were fortunate enough to be assigned, as Canadians, one of those 5 beaches. 2 of the others were assigned to the Americans, and 2 of the others were assigned to the British. So what we did is we decided that in order to take this into the digital age, what we had to do was to develop a database. And when students were starting to conduct their soldier research and looking through all of the files, they would take the information out of the pages and they would enter this into a database. Now, as they work through the entire file, we start collecting hundreds of pieces of information on an individual soldier. And once we had that information, we could then use it to develop an app. And our goal with the app was to honor those Canadian soldiers that died on Juno Beach on June 6, 1944. A lot of people said that it couldn't be done, especially inside of a high school classroom, that this was much far too advanced for high school students to be able to grasp how to make an app. At the time, we had Windows computers and we were working with PCs, and the technology that we had was going to allow us to develop apps specifically for the Windows Phone 8. Now, I'm sure you probably realize that the Windows Phone 8 is not a really popular phone, and I'd be surprised if you know someone that actually owns a Windows Phone 8. It's nothing to take away from them, they're actually quite good. But unfortunately, when we produced this app and we were successful in doing so, nobody could download it because nobody had that phone. So on the second instance in the progression or the evolution of the Lest We Forget project, we decided that once we were successful with this first round, that we would go bigger and better. And that's what we're going to be looking at today and really for the rest of the semester. We decided to expand the project by looking at a larger event. So in World War II, in the landing of Juno Beach on D-Day, we had roughly about 300 soldiers that passed away on the beach on that day. On Vimy Ridge, there are 3,598 soldiers that died during the battle. So we're basically expanding this project tenfold, 10 times as large. And in order to do that, we needed 10 times the number of classes, history classes, to be able to participate in the project. So we had to expand this across the country, and we're looking at close to 150 classes across the country that will be looking through soldier files, much like the one that you're looking at here, for the soldiers that fought and died during the Battle of Vimy Ridge. They'll be taking a look at all of the information, and they will be entering it into a database. Here's just a snapshot of what the database looks like. So for the World War I soldiers, there's not quite as much information as a World War II soldier. But we still have well over 100 individual pieces of information that are stored into 7 different tables that we can pull that information from, send it from our servers in Toronto into an app no matter where you are in the entire world. And it's our job as programmers to make sure that we set up those connections from the server to Toronto to the iPhone or the iPad that the person or the user is going to be using to look at all of the soldier information. And we always want to keep in the back of our minds that the entire goal, and the reason why we're doing this, is to honor the Canadian soldiers. So there's a greater sort of cause with the app development that we're going to be working on. So once we have all of this information inside the database, then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting up computer code using the Swift programming language that you guys have been working on in order to manipulate this, pull out the most relevant pieces of information, and display it digitally so that we have something nice to look at as people progress through the app. We want to focus people's attention on the individual soldiers. That's what the app is about. But we also want to take a look at all of the other aspects surrounding the individual soldiers and the event of the Battle of Vimy Ridge and how it took place. What I've done is I've created sort of a mind map to show you what the app sort of looks like at this stage in the game. Think of this little box right here in the middle as the menu. And as you can see, we have different branches coming off of the menu. We have one that is history. So we're going to be looking at 4 different pieces of the history of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Some of these are artwork that have been created. One is on the background of the information. One is on the statistics on how many soldiers died, how many casualties in total, how many number of guns, what types of guns were we using, that sort of stuff. And another one that might be a bit controversial is the Vimy myths that were sort of attached to this. So there's a lot of sort of folklore that's attached to this battle, that it really built the identity of Canada. And it was the first time that Canadian soldiers fought together, and all four divisions of the Canadian military came together in this battle. That soldiers went up and were able to take over Vimy Ridge. Everybody else tried, but everybody else failed, but it was the great Canadians that took this over. Now, part of that is actually a bit of propaganda. Other countries, actually France had already taken over. They weren't able to hold Vimy Ridge. And the other countries were working in unison with Canada at the time to make sure that Canada was successful, because it was such a pivotal piece of territory and really marked sort of the end of World War I, because once we started to utilize the tactics that we used in the Battle of Vimy Ridge, we realized that they were very successful, and then we could continue to use these, which broke the stalemate of the trench warfare that sort of defined World War I, and allowed us to make more of a mobile war afterwards, and which we eventually took over the Germans, and they had to surrender. So that is one sort of aspect of the app itself. We're going to create an about page that sort of shows the work that you guys have put into this, both from the historical standpoint and the 150 classes with all of the students that are doing the research on the soldiers, and the amount of work that you guys are going to put in developing the app. I should note also that the app has already begun. We've been working on it for just over a year right now, so there are some key pieces that are already, I wouldn't say complete, but they're almost complete, and some of you guys will be taking over those pieces and completing them by the end of this semester. The About page is actually one of those pages that has not even been started so far. Last semester I had a grade 12 computer science class that was working on some of the maps. So the maps have been started, and again, they didn't reach quite till the end, but they're very close. They needed to rely on some of the history students from across Canada to pull in information, and unfortunately that didn't get finished in time. So the setup is sort of, the foundation is there, and they're just waiting for more information before they can finish that off. So we've decided that what we would look at are really 4 different types of maps. The progression of the Western Front as Germany sort of invaded Belgium and they came into France. The trench line progression on the 4 days of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. So on April 9th, 1917, this is the trench line of where Canada was and how it progressed over the next 4 days. We also have the cemeteries and memorials of where the soldiers died and would be currently buried in France for those Canadians that did perish on that weekend. And also the other one are the battalions, the individual battalions that fought, where they were located around the hill, and the progression that they made over those 4 days. Other pieces are the weapons. So I have a pretty fantastic grade 12 student that makes 3D models, and he's been working very hard and diligently to construct 3D models of all of the weapons that were used during the Battle of Vimy Ridge. And we've created a portion of the app that you can interact with those weapons, and you can see all of the 3-dimensional objects and how they sort of work. There is a search, so that if you wanted to search an individual soldier, different battalions, it can actually narrow it down if you're looking for a very specific soldier. A soldier of the hour was decided that we would sort of have this on the home page. Every hour we would sort of highlight one of the soldiers, and then the next hour it would actually change into someone else. A virtual Vimy memorial, where we will actually be looking at sort of this picture, but a close-up, and the names that would be listed on the actual Vimy memorial. The battalion page is actually a large section of the app which has not been started yet, where we will be listing all of the different battalions. And you have to realize that all 4 divisions of the Canadian military at that time, so practically every single battalion that we had, will have their own individual page inside of the app. Now, all of that is used to focus on this bottom part right here. Our goal again is to honor the individual soldiers, and we have created or constructed sort of a Facebook-esque type soldier page for each individual soldier. So inside the soldier's page, it's going to be listing all of the information that we talked about inside the database. So we're going to be taking all of this and kind of creating a Facebook page for that soldier that will be broken down into different parts: a profile, a biography, which is broken down even further into personal, military, and medical information. Friends, which would be the other soldiers inside the same battalion that also died. A timeline, which is also another map that shows the timeline of the complete history of that soldier, showing on Apple Maps systems where the exact house where that soldier lived, the hospital that they were born in, and takes them through their entire life, finally culminating in a snapshot of the cemetery that they are currently buried inside of. Any photos that we might have and have been uploaded to our database, and also the medals and awards that they've won. So once we have sort of this brief sort of synopsis of what the app looks like, I'm going to show you now where we are with the app. Now, before I do that, I want to preface by saying your first reaction is going to be, this is not super great. And it's just going to show you that the importance that design and user interface plays inside of a nice looking app. And that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on this semester: how to properly design an app to make it look really appealing, to make it look interactive, to make users feel very comfortable and easy to progress from one stage to the next. So if I open up Xcode, which you guys should be familiar with, on the left-hand side over here, we see that we have all of the different Swift files. These are mostly view controller files that handle each individual page that we just looked at inside that mind map. And you can see there's quite a pile of them here. Now, each one of those matches in our storyboard, which is what you're looking at. And I zoomed out pretty far just so that you can see sort of the scope of the connections of all of the different view controllers that we're currently working with. So there's a lot of them. I would say not one of them is completely finished at this point, but we've made some great progress, and we just have to put some finishing touches on some of them, and other ones we actually have to start from scratch. Like I said, the battalion page has not begun yet, so I'm going to expect that one of you guys this semester will eventually take over that portion of the app and can construct that, and hopefully we'll have a working version by the end of this semester. At the end of this semester, I believe we're only going to see one other class sort of put the very finishing touches on this, and we will apply to Apple at the end of semester 1 next year in hopes that our app gets accepted and it will be placed inside the Apple App Store, and that means that anybody can download it as long as they have an iPhone. So I'm going to run the app right now, and you're going to see what does it actually look like. And like I said, it's pretty bare bones right now because the design has not been worked on whatsoever. So this is the main page. Now, eventually what will happen is we are going to see a picture of the Vimy monument on this page. And someone is going to have to design an interface so that you can interact and you can click on each one of these sections to take you into a different portion of the app. If I press on the search, it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's pretty bare bones at this point, so someone will have to take this over and design this as well. And you can type in, I think I put myself inside of this just for testing purposes. So if I take Black with my last name, and you can do partial searches. Now what just happened, and you might have noticed this, that short delay, is that it actually connected to our database, which is stored inside Toronto. And it was looking through the database for all of the soldiers with Black somewhere in their name. It could be the surname Black, but it also looks like this might be maybe a middle name, which is kind of unusual, but that's a soldier that has Black as a part of their name as well. So it's looking through and it found all of these soldiers that have black inside of that. So if I click on myself, because I do know that there is some information inside of here just for testing purposes, this now takes us into sort of that Facebook-esque portion of the app where it's now broken into biography, personal, military, medical. I don't think there are going to be any friends here. Oh, apparently I'm wrong. So these would be matching, each one of these soldiers would have a matched regiment or battalion as the one that I've chosen for myself. A timeline. This is one of the mapping features. I'm not sure if I have actual values inside of this. Doesn't look like it. So if I did, it would zoom into the very specific place where I was born, the house I grew up in, so on and so forth. If I had photographs also inside of that, it would be pulling those from the server in Toronto, uploading them into this section, and then also any of the medals that I've currently won would be in this guy right here, which is called a table view controller. So that's the Facebook sort of section of the app. We can also search by battalion names, and we can do location searches as well. So you could put in North Dundas, you could put in Russell and see what comes up for each one of those, and there probably are some soldiers from that area that have actually participated in the Battle of Vimy Ridge. The history section, again, is just, you'll notice that the previous programmers, the previous students that took over this section have set it up. They didn't have the information at that point. Again, we depend on a lot of the information from the history classes. It's not really our job to go out and grab this information as computer programmers. So when we get that information, we can just feed it into the app. And there are other sections to background, stats, and the Vimy myths that we talked about a little bit before. The weapons, right now, I believe there's only one weapon that has been inputted into the app, but we do have a lot of these other ones ready to roll whenever someone wants to take over that section. And I know a couple of you guys mentioned that you do have a pretty keen interest in armor and weapons, maybe from a different era, but it might be something that you'd want to be interested in taking a look at. So the Ross rifle is one of the 3D models that has actually been created. So you can interact with this. There's a whole bunch of more information on this that is actually in the app right now. We're just not displaying it in labels. So we'll have to come up with a design that shows a pretty interesting way of giving off all of the information on the Ross rifle, how it was used, when it was used, some of the more intricate details like the speed of the bullets as it was fired outside of the rifle. Some of the maps right now, you'll notice that we've just decided right now we just needed a quick logo right here. So this logo will change. And what it is it's just like a little slider that I can pull out from the side. So you've probably seen this type of thing on one of your smartphones already. It allows us to grab some of the other features of the app. So we can change the map type to, this would be a hybrid example. Hybrid is where you're taking a satellite image, but you're also overlaying the town names and some other pieces of information. You can see Vimy showing up right here. And this one, I believe, is just the straight satellite mode. I'll just slide that back so you can see more of what's going on. It's taking a little bit of time to load up right now, but that's not really the important part. The pins that you're looking at right now represent individual battalions. So eventually what we would like to see is that as I click on one of these pins, we would have a piece of information showing which battalion. This is the 42nd Battalion that comes up. You can now click on this and it would take you into a battalion page that hasn't been constructed yet, showing you all of the information on the 42nd Battalion. Oops, I wanted to go back in there. The cemeteries, again, this is more information that we're just waiting on people. This is the Vimy Memorial right here, so that you could tap this and it would take you into more information on that. Trench line progression, there's not really going to be much on this again. But you can maybe see this small little line right here. So this is called a polyline, and what it will do is it will sort of drop down from the top, sort of a squiggled line of the advancement of the Canadian soldiers over the course of those 4 days and the advancements that were made. And it'll be very clear to see once we have the lines overlaid on top of the map. This would be an example of another line. This is the Western Front as it looks, stretching from Belgium all the way down to Switzerland. So the Germans would have been on the right-hand side of this. Now this is called the Western Front because there was also an Eastern Front just over here where Germany was sort of taking on the Russians at the same time that we were fighting them on the Western Front. So those are the maps that we're going to be working with. The Soldier of the Hour, like I mentioned, is just going to be a quick pop-up of an individual soldier, and when we click on that, it will take us into their sort of Facebook page, if you will. So that's just a brief synopsis of where we're at with the app right now. So just try to keep a memory of what it looks like right now, and by the end of the semester, you're going to notice that there are going to be massive changes as we start to implement a lot of the design and the user interface, how people interact with the app to make it more appealing and to make it more just comfortable to work with. So the last thing I wanted to show you today is that we've also created sort of a OneNote. Now this has actually been inside of our class notebook for quite some time. I've been just slowly progressing and working on this as I've been going through the app. What you're going to be doing as one of your first assignments is you're going to be taking a look at the app, and we're going to be trying to identify some of the bugs and other suggestions to make this app look better. So each one of you is going to have to come up with 3 suggestions or identify 3 bugs inside of the app. So starting with the home page, or also called the menu screen, what are some of the things that still need to be done? So I've outlined a bunch of bullets, maybe given some ideas for this, and you are just going to be tacking on other bullets if you have some suggestions for what the menu should look like, or some creative ideas on how to make it just look visually more appealing. What are some of the user interface options that we could put for that? Or if you find a bug that's not currently working right now, that would be something that would be great if we could come up with this. So as someone takes it over, they're going to realize that I need to fix all of the bugs. So I've typically placed on each one of these what still needs to be done. So for example, the about that I discussed earlier, everything needs to be done because it hasn't been started yet. So someone will be taking over that section of the app. On the history side, well, what things need to be done? Well, the history main page actually is more just sort of an option page that feeds you into 4 of the different types of the histories. And that's what each one of these arrows represents, that there's some sort of connection inside of the app. So it's pretty comprehensive. I think we have about 30 different pages in total to take a look at. And we're just going to be adding a whole bunch of information here as an entire class. So we have roughly 30 people. If each of us does 3 or 4 of these, then we're going to have 100 more pieces of information, of bugs or suggestions that we can be working on. And then as you decide what section of the app that you would like to work on, for instance, if I want to do weapons and I see a whole bunch of stuff down here, it will give me a clearer picture of what I need to do and how I can do that. Where do I go to find the information on fixing up some of those bugs? The last thing I'll say today is that you also have the option of coming up with something, coming up with a unique idea that has never been done before, that someone hasn't thought that would be a really cool feature inside the app. I want you guys to really start taking a very close look at user interface and how it's used all over the place. It's something that we oftentimes take for granted as we're using apps on our phone, as we're watching TV commercials, and how certain text is displayed inside your video games, the heads-up displays, maps on things like Call of Duty, where they are. All of these are options, especially on the options screen, that can give us ideas of how to make our own app more appealing. So with that being said, I hope you guys have just a bit of a better understanding of where we're headed for the second half of the semester, and I will touch base with you guys very soon. Thank you very much.